All right, so we began our inquiry joining Socrates and Glaucon and Adeimantus, who are raising the question, why bother being good if you could get away with being bad? Strangely enough, that seemingly simple question is the entire question driving this book. And you would be like, well, it's a weird question. But we can imagine cases where very powerful people seem to be able to get away with murder, right? And if you had enough power, if you could accumulate so much power, you could evade the gaze of men and gods, right? Remember, we're seated in a pagan setting here. Why would you bother being good, right? So maybe what we should be training our young to do is to become very, very powerful and learn how to get away with crime, right? And only pursue justice if they're weak. Oh, you're a little bunch of weaklings? Oh yeah, let's form a little republic, a little society, and we'll talk about justice. We make this up to make ourselves feel good, right? But justice is really wimpy. Hello, Eric, come on down. You're the next. Yeah, you just lost points. -3. And so, right, we were setting up this problem of power versus goodness. Which is greater? Should we be reading the Bible or should we be reading The Prince? The big challenge. And so Glaucon and Adeimantus created this scenario with the ring that if we become invisible, all of the rewards that we typically associate with the just man, we would put on the unjust man. And all of the penalties of injustice and harm and misery that we typically associate with the unjust man, we would actually attach them to the just man. And at that point, what are we doing? We're isolating this crucial question. Is justice good in itself? Or, as Glaucon and Adeimantus suspect, is it only good for other things? And as soon as you can't get those other things, you dispense with justice. So, Socrates, of course, is reeling from the argument, as we saw, and he says, well, guys, it's tough for me to know what to do. Because if I really thought that you were persuaded by this argument, I would not trust you. Except that I do trust you. So what am I supposed to do? Right? And they tug at him like, no, you've got to grab the argument. We want to know what justice really is. And so he says, well, I do have a notion. If we could see what justice was in a bigger place, then perhaps we could find it in the smaller place in the soul because it seems so elusive in this situation. So why don't we take a look at justice as it is in the cities where it would seemingly be big, and once we have identified it there, we could then use that analogy to go back to the soul and identify justice in the soul. And then hopefully show that justice is absolutely necessary for happiness, that if you're not just, you'll never be happy, and that justice is sufficient for happiness. That with justice, you are happy. So that essentially, justice is happiness. Glaucon and Adeimantus are thrilled with this, and they're like, yes, let's do it. And so we began the building of our city, right? A city in speech, remember, not a physical city because we're philosophers. And we don't want to wear hard hats like those guys out there. So we do it in speech, and so we begin to look at what are the fundamental building blocks of human nature that lead us into civilization, into cities. And we found 2. Number 1, we lack self-sufficiency. We're fundamentally built for community. And we found out we all have different kinds of capabilities and gifts, and that led us to the one-man, one-job principle. Right? If we all try to do everything, then we're going to have nothing that's very good. We're not going to be particularly efficient at it. And we're going to ignore the fact that we seem to be differently gifted. So rather than all trying to be the same, we ought to genuinely appreciate and be grateful for the differences in different people. And that does have the consequence that there are people that are better than we are. And rather than being envious and wanting to take them down and destroy them, we ought to be grateful and thankful. Because this is how civilizations thrive. You have a choice. You either aim at equality or you aim at excellence. You can't have both. Okay? Very interesting principle. All right. And so we realized that if we're fundamentally about the fundamental needs, we're going to need food, hence we need farmers. We're going to be needing houses, hence we need carpenters. Some shoes would be nice, so some cobblers, and then weavers. Then we realized that they needed a series of things, right? So, we needed smiths to provide this, and then we needed miners to do these things to provide the ore. Then, of course, we realized shopkeepers would be helpful to now exchanges of supplies. And then we realized that, well, how in the world are we going to have everything we could possibly need in one perfect location, perfect lumber, perfect hills, right? Perfect fields. And so we realized we need an entire trading capability, right? And Socrates says, okay, there you go. There you've got your city. And Glaucon and Adeimantus are shocked. They're like, whoa, wait a minute. Where are the relishes? And Socrates is like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Relishes, right? And they're like, how about couches? People that do not want to be wretched do not recline on reeds and barley, right? Eat barley and do reeds. We want houses and cars and entertainment centers and all these things. And Socrates is like, oh, I see. I know what you want. You want relishes. So it's okay if you want to pursue a feverish, luxurious city, a little sick, a little on the side of keeling over into trouble, so be it. We will see how justice and injustice arise in those sorts of cities too. But the best city, in my opinion, is this one we just talked about. But still, we can do it. And they're like, let's do it, right? And so we made our list and we did that. And then we noticed that this huge group of people, we called them the wealth creators or the producers, right? The first class of people is voluminous, huge, each person focusing on his specific trade, right? Division of labor to the hilt, to maximize efficiency and production. But then we looked at this design and we thought, boy, that looks strangely like a target. And we thought to ourselves, aren't we making ourselves a target? Right? We're voluminous, we've got all this wealth, everyone's going to want to come here, and some people are going to be like, let's just take it. These people are wimps. Let's take them out. Make them slaves, take all their goodies. And so we thought we're going to need some guardians to protect us, and that's led to our second class of citizens. But the problem is, what kind of people are going to be guardians? And we thought we could have the malicious concept from our Minuteman history and the American Revolutionary War, right? Farmer by day, soldier by night, or vice versa, however it works. But we realized that's violating our one man, one job principle, right? We talked about how Washington despised militia. They ran away from battle. They expected double pay. They always went home to the wife. They weren't true continental soldiers. And worst of all, every time the British let loose a volley, they all took off. So Washington wanted a professional army, right? And how did he get that? The Prussian general von Steuben came over and trained and drilled our troops so they learned how to fight the British style, toe-to-toe. The most efficient system. People say, why would you line up and shoot each other? How stupid. On the contrary, it is the only way with those weapons to get anywhere because they're so inaccurate. So the idea is you line up a lot of guys, close range, and you shoot faster. And that's where the British excelled. Do you realize not a single other European army practiced with live ammunition? Only the British. That's why the British were so good. That's why they were so effective. And the Americans, in the end, were able to stand up against them line to line. Impressive. Von Steuben pulled it off. Washington, trained army. So how do we train? Well, Socrates says, number one, obviously we got to be physically fit. In all areas, not just one thing like spear throwing, right? Because what happens if you're in trees? You got to be able to be flexible. So we talked about the benefit of athletics. He calls it gymnastic. It's physically beneficial, right? Strength. It teaches you discipline and order, which you need in an army. It teaches you aggressiveness. Yeah, sounds good. Aggressiveness and teamwork. Very important, right? Unit survival is the key to individual survival. Total transformation of mind. And notice that gymnastic impacts both body and soul. Okay, but that's not enough. You can't just have very effective warriors, because what happens when these people come home? They're going to look at us and be like, yeah, you do look ripe for conquest, right? The problem Jefferson warned us of, standing army, big problem. So we need to calm the wild beasts, soothe them out. And we said, in addition then, we need to have them study music. And by music, we mean all the elements, poetry, drama, art, which will carefully tailor to help guide and aim them toward a life where they can be calm at home and believe that their true value isn't in this physical stuff world with cars and houses. What do they need for that, right? Because why? They have honor. They have gold here. Their value isn't the private sphere. Their value is the public sphere. And so we're going to teach them music that motivates those things and calms them. And we're going to have them have all things in common so that they are public in their orientation. Also, we're going to have them study philosophy. Why? Because philosophy fundamentally distinguishes appearance from reality. And if you're going to be an effective soldier, you have to be able to figure out deceptions of the enemy, and you have to figure out how to deceive the enemy. You have to be able to set the seeming versus the being, and you have to be able to see through the appearance to get to the reality. So philosophy becomes a crucial study for our guardians. All right, that then led us to our final class. We had people who obey the laws, we had people that enforce the laws, and we needed people to set them up. Can you not see because it's too low? Okay, the rulers. We need some rulers. Okay. And again, we said, well, where are these people going to come from? Which class? And we immediately realized we've got these public-minded veterans, 30 years, ready to retire generals. I mean, what is a general doing? He's running an army that's very much like a city, all the logistics, proven themselves, right? My wounds are all in the front. Remember Marius? And we're thinking, okay, these are the great people. But of course, they're not going to want this. They know what ruling really is. Since all power exists for the sake of those under it, the real power of ruling, the purpose, is to get yourself involved with other people's problems and have to sort them out, and you get no benefit. How does that sound fun? Makes you wonder why people want to rule. Probably because that's not what they want to use the power for. But that's what the power is really for. These guys will understand this, so they're not going to want to do it. So Socrates says, we're going to have to pass a law that some of them that we select will have to serve 5 years, if not they go to jail. And they'll be like, oh, okay, fine. And they'll sign up for a 5-year stint. And they will become our philosopher kings. All right? Now, of course, we immediately realize people are going to be like, say what? Philosopher kings? So this is really a big game you philosophers play? Wanting to take over? Of course the philosopher king, right? You didn't say Burger Kings, right? No, it's philosopher kings. But then we talked about what is a philosopher here. It's not an academic, head in the clouds idiot, right? Not people like me at academics. These are people who have proven themselves in the line of duty for 30 to 35 years, right? Whose blood has been spilt for their country. The practice of philosophy, you understand? Not just a bunch of crazy theory. Philosophy isn't even a study. It's not an ology. Did you ever notice that? Geology, right? Those things? No, it's a philosophia. Philo. What does philo mean in Greek? It's a love. So philosophy fundamentally is the love of wisdom. Think about that. Because that means you can be a philosopher without being an academic. And you can be an academic PhD with a degree in philosophy, but not be a philosopher. Wisdom lovers are the philosophers. Hence, we should all be philosophers, or we all strive to be philosophers, because wisdom is worth having. All right, and I believe, my fine friends, that that is where we left off in Book 4. So let's go pick up where we left off. They had found the city. And I believe we are now at 427D. Page 105, 427D, using our Platonic notation in the margins. We'll erase the board so we can again cover it with scrawl. All right. So then, son of Ariston, I said, I meaning Socrates, remember he's the narrator, your city would now be founded. In the next place, get yourself an adequate light somewhere and look yourself. Call in your brother and Polemarchus and the others, and whether we can somehow see where justice might be and where the injustice, in what they differ from one another, and which the man who's going to be happy must possess, whether it escapes the notice of all gods and humans or not. All right, so this is a wrap-up of the argument, right? Let's get back to why we did all this for the last 2.5 books. You're talking nonsense, said Glaucon. You promised you would look for it because it's not holy for you not to bring help to justice and everywhere in your power. Now, at the end of last week, we were like stunned at this, right? What is going on here? Why is Glaucon objecting to this? But then we looked back more closely at what Socrates just said. Look yourself with the adequate light. Call in your brother and Polemarchus. In other words, Socrates says, I founded your city. Good luck, go find justice. I'm going to go get a sandwich. All right? And Glaucon's like, no, you don't get to start this thing. Take us all the way to this point and then jump out of the argument. Socrates responds, what you remind me of is true, I said, and though I must do so, you too have to join in. We'll do so. Now then, I said, and I hope I'll find it in this way. Now, what is going on here? Right? What is going on here? This is revealing something very, very crucial about philosophy. Can any of you see what it is? How should philosophy proceed?
It's discursive. It's not something
correct. It is dialectical. We would use the word dialogue. Oh, interesting. My pen is dead. Okay.
Having a conversation about truth.
Let's try blue. Nope, that's not good either. Blue is dead. Let's go to red, the color of blood. Oh yeah, we're in, baby. Dialogue, dialectic, that's the philosophical process that Socrates is talking about. Right? And the idea is speaking through, speaking together. In other words, it takes two, at least. Socrates is always talking in dialogues. Why? What do dialogues help that being on your own does not?
Thinking aloud.
Thinking aloud, but you could do that by yourself in front of a mirror.
No. I mean, yeah. But hearing another person's opinion.
Okay. You've got new food, new fuel. Someone else with a different perspective, a different argument. Right?
And they use like the method of Elenchus, where he's questioning.
Yes.
Effectively, always coming up with a better, deeper layer, appealing.
Right. Exactly. A question. And if you're in a dialogue with somebody, both of you can ask a question. Something that you haven't thought of. Look, we all see certain types of things and we might miss things. So it is so valuable for us to take our ideas and throw them into the arena and let everyone take their best shot. If it's a lousy idea, it's going to get shot down. And those people have done you a favor. They'll have relieved you of a stillborn idea. Actual Socratic image. On the other hand, if they all take their best shot and your ideas hold, you're like, well, that's pretty good. And the people who took the best shot should be thinking, I'm going to have to change my mind. This is right. That's the way philosophy is supposed to proceed. What we often see, though, right, is that people don't change their mind because they really don't care about the truth. They just get mad and walk away. Not true philosophy. Same thing happened in Socrates' time. Same thing happened with Socrates all the time. And we'll see how that eventually leads them to take him out. Drink the hemlock, Socrates. We want to be rid of you. All right? So the pursuit of the truth can be very costly because people can get quite upset. Now, obviously, we might want to be politic about how far we push the dialectic in different situations. Jesus did say, don't throw your pearls to a bunch of pigs. So if the people want nothing to do with it, don't waste your time. Don't put yourself too much at risk. On the other hand, sometimes you have to make the move. You have to ask the question. And sometimes you have to be in the position of being questioned and realize, yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. And if you can do that, that enables you to change. Because the only way to have growth is to change. Right? And a lot of people in religion think that means we're in trouble. Right? Especially in Protestantism, where you have 45,000 denominations. If you change one thing, you just switch churches. No possibility of change, no possibility of growth. Ironic. But in Catholicism, we seek what is true. And if it turns out something we thought was true, it turns out not to be, we'll be like, okay. Right? Sola Veritas, that is our motto. We believe Jesus and trust him because it's been grounded in an authority of truth. Socrates is after the truth. And so he presents the argument and he makes sure the other people join in. The other way to think of this is pedagogical. Look, the only way you're ever going to truly believe something is if you wrangle with it for yourself. If you try to tear it apart and it holds, you're like, okay, I have confidence. Otherwise, you live perpetually in fear. What if I'm wrong? Oh no. Right? And you live all consumed with all this doubt and anxiety. Don't be like that. Don't be like that. The Catholic Church has the greatest philosophers in history. There's a reason why we've stood this test of time. Granted, we have the Holy Spirit and Jesus too. Okay, fine. These little details. But the Spirit is the Spirit of truth, right? Jesus is the eternal Word, the wisdom of God. You understand? That is what's driving this. So we should have a great confidence. We do not suppress doubts in the Catholic Church. In RCIA, we encourage full open inquiry. What's your question? Let's engage it. And then we go after it. And that approach works. Why? Because everyone can really explore and see what's true. And that's what Socrates is telling us to do. We all have to join in. You understand? All right, now, here we go. Now then, I said, continuing. I hope I'll find it in this way. I suppose our city, if that is it has been correctly founded, is perfectly good, necessarily. Plainly then, it's wise, courageous, moderate, and just. All right, now these are the classical cardinal virtues, the greatest four virtues. Cardinal meaning at the heart of the matter, the essential, the core ones. Wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. You're like, justice? That's what we've been after the whole time. How right you are. Plainly, isn't it the case that whichever of them we happen to find will leave as the remainder what hasn't been found? Of course. Therefore, just as with any other four things, if we were seeking any one of them in something or other and recognized it first, that would be enough for us. But if we recognize the other three first, this would also suffice for the recognition of the thing looked for. For plainly, it couldn't be anything but what's left over. What you say is correct, he said. With these things too, since they happen to be four, mustn't we look for them in the same way? Plainly. Well, it's wisdom, in my opinion, which first comes plainly to light in it, and something about it looks strange. You were hoping it would be justice and would be done. But alas, we're going to find the other three first, and justice will be what's left over. But something strange about wisdom. I wonder what it could be.
Sorry.
Emergency.
No.
If you have a baby emergency, you can go ahead.
No.
All right. New fathers. Very exciting. I'm pretty sure we just agreed that Socrates can't do this alone. We all have to join in. It stands to reason that I'm in the same situation. So maybe you should all join in. An idea suddenly comes into my mind. Why don't you guys do the digging and mining and find the virtues for me? After all, we know they're in these pages right now, all four. You're like, you mean in the book? That's what I was thinking. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to break them into groups, 3 groups. The numbers should be 4, 4, and 3. You may divide your, or 4, 3, and 3. Yeah, 4, 3, and 3. 4. Let's go with 4, 3, and 3, because that minus a person. And then I want you to do this. I want you to find each virtue. What do you mean by find, you say? I mean location. Where in the city is this found? You say, what do you mean by location? I mean which class or classes have it. And then secondly, what is it? What is the nature of that virtue? Its definition. Okay? Into which class or classes is it found, and what is its definition or nature? Everyone understand the mission? So break up into your groups. If you don't have a book, share with be borrowing from someone who does. And start with wisdom, work yourselves together, and then we'll move to courage, and then to moderation, and then to justice. And once you've got all 4, we'll come back together and we'll see what we can do together that all alone we probably cannot pull off. So get to work.
So then courage, we start talking about that.
Okay, I'm hearing all of you making a common error, so I'm going to announce something.
Yeah.
You're all identifying correctly that Socrates says that wisdom is found in the true guardians, but you're confusing the true guardians with the guardian auxiliaries. Remember, he starts off by saying the warriors are called the guardians. Then, as he starts talking about the rulers, he starts to call those people the true guardians of the city, the philosopher kings. And the original guardian warriors, he starts to call them the guardian auxiliaries. So when you see references to the wisdom being found in the true guardians, he doesn't mean the military group.
Philosopher King.
He means the rulers, the philosopher kings, correct. Carry on. All right. Let's see what you discovered now that you two are joining in. Wisdom. What is its nature and where is it found?
In the Philosopher Kings class.
Okay, it's in our rulers or philosopher kings. Good. And what is its nature or definition?
Practical knowledge, experience.
Well, this is very broad because, if I grow apples, I'm going to gain an enormous amount of very practical understanding, very particular about apples. Is it thanks to the apple growers that we say that a city is wise? No, we would say a city is delicious, right? So we're still a little broad. We need to narrow this definition down further. What are we talking about here? Thanks to which class?
I think it's almost like a meta wisdom. It's knowledge about knowledge. It's knowing how to rule sort of the bigger issues, not just how to be a good apple grower, but how to be good at your job. So a layer of knowledge.
Okay, it's thanks to good counsel for the city as a whole, not for a part. Apple growing is a part. Woodworking is a part. Tractor building is a part. But what about ruling the city per se, right? So we need a broader, it's good counsel for the sake of the whole. So it is a kind of practical knowledge, but it's of a universal sort, right?
That's a good word.
Okay.
Yeah.
So very good. All right, what about courage? Where is it found? What is its definition?
It's the warrior class.
Okay, it's found in our Guardian Auxiliaries. And its definition?
People who uphold their convictions no matter what.
No.
Holding fast to what is true and good.
Okay, we're getting some pieces. Because what good are the convictions if they're wrong?
Convictions was a bad word.
That's right. Okay, so it's holding fast. That's the preservative. Right? That's the preservative. And Elisa said preserving what? Good, lawful, and true opinion. Concerning what things?
What things are terrible.
What things are terrible, which we'll get back to shortly, because that seems weird, admittedly.
This is sort of subjective.
Well, we'll get to that shortly. Concerning terrible things over against what? What are we preserving it against? Two ways in which evil can affect the situation.
Not casting it out in pains or pleasures, desire and fear.
Okay, against fear, pain, right? There's the harm. Or,
Hedonism?
right, promises of pleasure. In other words, bribery. We normally think of courage as holding the line against fear. Socrates is saying that doesn't go far enough. There's two ways our soldiers could do us in. One, they could run away from the battle. Not good. Two, they could take bribes, open the gates.